something that we go over quite often is well, one of the things, and I think I explained to you, almost daily we'll script or we'll role play for different situations. Everything from defending our commission. Of course, it's much more popular now where people will take a discount commission. Other things like even generating business. How do I reach out to friends and family? We're talking about family now. How do I reach out to them and not sound like I'm trying to sell them, and really trying to lead with value and learn what's most important to them? And one thing we do quite often is with the scripts we have, we first look at what the script is trying to say. I've seen so many times, and this happens to me also, when I'm doing something new and maybe I lack confidence, I put so much emphasis into the wording, into what I say rather than how I say it. And I just want to say, I mean, it's important to practice. We do it quite often, but at the same time, we have to be guiding the conversation as well and understanding why we ask specific questions throughout or make specific statements. So, so yeah, I'm going to kind of go through some things to keep in mind through conversations with people where one, it's going to give you a lot of confidence that even if you're fresh out of school, a week out, you can still lead these conversations in a way where you're trying to bring something of value to the person across from you. They also don't feel like they're just being sold. And we're going to kind of talk about differentiating between those things. So maybe I'll start with a question. Have you been in a situation, and I'm sure you have at some point, in a situation where you just feel like you're in this pressure sales situation? Someone is going through, I think you talked about like doing door-to-door sales for a little while too, right? Or am I completely off?
No, that wasn't me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just being in a situation, maybe someone came to your door where you just feel like they're just trying to hammer you and get you to say yes, and they almost annoy you into saying yes. Can you think of a situation like that?
Yeah, there is a guy at my door just recently trying to sell
Oh, really?
trying to sell some kind of security system.
Oh, really?
Like he was talking for like 5 minutes before I could even budge in a word. Like,
Yeah.
oh no, thanks.
That's interesting. So one thing you've already said, he was talking for 5 minutes. So he was doing most of the talking, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't
Any
squeeze
other,
it in.
yeah, and any other components to that, or anything you remember that stood out from that situation to make it a pressure and uncomfortable situation?
He's just like, if you stand up now, you'll get a deal.
Yeah.
Or
Limited time offer, do it today, don't think about it, right? Don't think, just do it
yeah,
type thing.
give me some stats on the crime rates or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I continue, hopefully I'm not completely putting down a whole industry. I know there are great people in this industry, but I remember an experience where I was looking for a car, and ever since then, I do not like going to dealerships because of this one experience. But I remember walking in, and this guy, he comes right out and greets me and everything like that, and then he starts going, before anything, he's like, "Have you seen these cars? Let me take you over and take a look at this car." It was so not what I was looking for. I mean, it's this low two-door, like sporty little thing, and I was like, this guy, I swear. And I think even during the conversation, somehow he said, "We're running this contest as salespeople right now," and it was almost like, "Can you help me out and look at these cars? Just test drive it because we really need to sell these cars," right?
Yeah.
So he kept throwing all this stuff, like you're saying, limited time offer. I'm sure we can cut down the price even more. We're having this contest as salespeople. What it really boiled down to is I completely felt like this guy was doing anything and saying anything possible to get me to do what he wanted me to do. And it was not about me whatsoever in the conversation. So that's, for the most part, we're going to go through kind of some steps in the process. For me, at least, it helps me get out of my own way, where sometimes maybe I may even have the goal that I really want to help this person, but the person isn't ready to be led, or the person doesn't trust me enough, or isn't allowing me, to lead with value or present a solution. These steps have really helped me in that process. And then, so I'll share these steps. And then after that, I'll give a few things that you can actually do right now before you even get into real estate, where I'm telling you, you're going to be that much more prepared when you get into the business than a lot of people that have been in the business for, 15, 20 plus years. One thing we're hearing as far as the value add a lot nowadays is the value is in, I will take a discount. I don't want your money, and that's the value that I bring. Just so you know, I'm going to say this right out of the gate. My whole stance with the agents I work with and everything is them building enough value where there's no question why someone would want to, pay the full commission or what they're worth.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're a reflection. We get paid essentially what we're worth, our abilities. So, okay, first, there's a step, and you're going to see this literally in a lot of scripts that you see. Within these scripts, it follows a progression of the conversation to make it conversational, to not make someone feel pressured. One of the first things that we need to focus on in these conversations, the first step really before you do anything else, is you must connect. You have to connect with the individual. For me, this is when I know when I've connected with them, when I can ask a question and I feel like they'll give me an honest answer. And they're not just trying to shut the door as they're talking to me. Or there have been situations where I've had someone on the phone and I'm like, okay, bye. All right, gotta go.
Yeah.
That person is not connected with me, right? So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It's basically what do I do in a situation like this to connect with someone? For me, a lot of times it's looking for what I have in common. If it's reaching out to maybe a friend or former coworker I haven't spoken to in a very long time, I reconnect and I base that off of where our connection was years in the past. I'm famous for giving really weird examples here, but something that just comes to mind is I remember bringing up, I never worked at Pepsi, but it's almost as if I'm drinking a Pepsi and I call a friend and I'm like, hey man, I'm drinking this Pepsi and I just remembered years back when we worked at Pepsi distributing together. We're really looking to reconnect based off of where we connected in the past. The second aspect of building connection with people that's extremely important is creating rapport. One thing that I find with a lot of agents, if they ever get themselves to the point where they have to say something like, maybe with a neighbor or family member, Connor, I can't believe you didn't use me. I'm in real estate, don't you? And then you respond something with like, oh yeah, sorry, Chris. I remember you saying you're in real estate. I love you to death, man. Sorry about that. I'll see what I can do for you the next time around. What that sounds like to me is maybe there's lots of friends that I have that I may not do business with.
Yeah.
Right. So rapport for me is when someone thinks of me, do they think not only of someone that they can trust and someone they get along with and someone they like as a person, but someone knows what they're talking about when it comes to real estate. And when you think anything along the lines of real estate, you think of me. Right. So there's ways in which we can build rapport with people. I talked about friends and family earlier. What that looks like to me is I may reach out to a friend or family member, reconnect briefly. How you doing? Haven't spoken to you in a month. And then I share something with them to let them know that this is a conversation around real estate of value to them. So it's going to be like, I just came across this statistic, or I was working with someone the other day and they had this problem and I wanted to make sure this isn't something you're going through, or whatever it is. But I introduce something along the lines where basically I want to teach them something around real estate that they may be interested in. Yeah. If I can do that, typically I build rapport with someone and they won't remember what I told them, but weeks, months later, they'll remember that I taught them something and I said something around real estate that was of value to them, right? So once I have that connection and I build rapport with someone, the next step that's very important is I kind of diagnose the situation. I ask questions. So in that moment, I go into, tell me, where are you living now? How do you like it there? What's the one thing you would change about your area if you could? Have you heard about what's going on with interest rates now? What do you think about this market? Questions can also be, for me, I worked with a lot of other business owners before in partnerships. So for me, it was, hey, we've known each other a while. I don't even know what you do for work. What is it that you do for work? And then someone will share with me that, and then that can start a conversation around what we both do and how we can refer business to one another.
Yeah, that's
But
a common question.
What's that?
It's a common question.
Exactly.
That comes up every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do?
And then from there, if I'm truly listening, I'm sure you may have heard this before, but the best salespeople in the world, they're the best listeners. They know how to ask a question and shut up. They know how to ask someone when they can see that there's, or notice that there's a hot button or a little bit of emotion there or a hang up somewhere. They say, tell me more about that, or help me understand, or what do you mean by that? Why is that important to you? And then we can uncover the emotion behind things. So what that can look like is, I'll give you a real life example. One of my former clients, I was talking to him and I said, so how long have you been there now in your home? And he said, oh, we've been here forever. I'm sure we're going to die here. He's this older gentleman. It's probably 70, low, 71, 72, something like that. And then through the question, when I started talking to him about that, I'm like, wow, that's great. What do you like so much about the area? Why did you move out there? And he says, this and this was a big deal to us. But I could tell there was something there about the home. And I just said, Don, what's one thing you may change about your situation if you could? And just because I asked the question and I made it open-ended instead of very specific, yes or no questions, he said, well, the house is kind of large now that the kids are gone, and maintaining it has been a little bit of trouble. But other than that, we're really good. We really like the area. And it's nice to have family come over where we have space. Okay, great. And this isn't to be manipulated or anything, of course, but I just say, what's one other thing you may change if you could? And because he started thinking along those lines, he said, well, it'd be great if we had a single story. And rather than just saying right away, oh, I know some great single story homes in the area, I then asked, why is that important to you? And I gave him the opportunity to be able to express and think about this. And he's like, well, I can't remember his wife's name, but he said, she has to go upstairs every single day to do the laundry. And I worry about her going up the stairs and coming down the stairs carrying all this laundry if she's going to fall, because she's having a hard time getting around. Yeah. And just because I gave him the opportunity to voice that, I then said, well, Don, I hope you don't mind me asking, but if that's an issue and you could find like another home in the area where you can still have family come over, is there a reason you haven't looked into that? And then he just went into, well, I don't think we can afford it, things like that. But that just opened up a conversation where we could talk about it. They did move, and they moved into a much better situation for them. But we never would have gotten to that place or uncovered that opportunity if I didn't ask questions, right? Yeah. And it's always good to make those questions open-ended. Tell me more about that. It's really like you go into a doctor's office. He doesn't just say like, hey, you told me this, so I'm going to prescribe this. He asks you a few questions first. Then, of course, that brings to the third step. If I'm truly listening and I uncover a need that they may have, at that point, I then present a solution. So in his case, I just said, Don, I completely get it where you're coming from. What I'd really recommend is first, let's just look at the value of your home to see how much money we can pull out of your property. And then from there, we'll be able to know if it's something we can realistically do to look at another home. So I presented a solution there. And then once I present a solution, if it's according to what their needs are, the last step is I invite them to do something. And that looks like, Don, let's just have a conversation about it. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on questions you have. Is your wife going to be home? I'm available tomorrow afternoon. What's best for you guys? And because I've, again, identified that need and presented a solution, people are that much more willing to meet and talk about it. Any thoughts about that or questions about that? Or
yeah, just a couple like off the top of my head is that it's like when you first starting out, trying to provide value to people, like give them random factors you probably don't know about.
Yeah.
But as far as like cold calling and stuff like that, how do you provide value right away?
So when you're cold calling, it's a great question. When you're cold calling, depending on the group you're reaching out to,
Yeah.
many times they're not looking for as much of a connection. They want you to get to the content. Let's say if I'm calling, let's say expired listings. So those are listings that were active, they expired on the market. And then a lot of agents will reach out to those to say, when are you looking to put your home back on the market, and interview agents. If I take forever to talk about, how about the Jazz, huh? Or things like this, they haven't given me permission to connect with them. And let's face it, also, a lot of times if I were to call a friend and just talk to him about anything and everything for a while, he'd probably start to wonder, what is Chris really calling about? So one, the type of questions we would ask, for me, at least in scripting that we do, we start to ask questions around, why do you think the home didn't sell? What's going on with the property? It may be like the pictures look excellent online. It looks like it's priced right. I'm trying to figure out, one, if there's a buyer, if you'd still be willing to sell again. And then two, why do you feel it didn't sell in the past? Right.
Yeah.
And then based on that, when we have that conversation and I can start to analyze what's going on, I can then present, like, this is my value proposition to be able to get your home sold for the most this market's willing to pay by doing this and this. I know when you're starting out, so usually when people lack confidence and they think it's more about what I have to say, what usually happens is, and this is kind of like the salesperson approach, this is the pressure situation. All they really do is step 3 of what I just mentioned. All they do is present. It sounds like this. They say, hey, how you doing? Good to meet you. I'm here in the area today providing this. And if they say no, they say, well, how about this? What 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 about this? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. You twisted my arm. I'm going to discount it even more. But all they're doing is presenting something that they want to give them. I'll also tell you, while I'm not giving you so many specifics around different situations, because there's so many different situations, if you ask questions and dig deeper and say, why is that important to you? Or why do you think that happened? Or what else? I've actually found that many times you don't even have to provide a solution, but because you're the first person to ask questions, they think you understand them better than anyone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You can find solutions too when you ask questions.
Yeah. So it sounds like if I ask a question and say, well, in that situation, and say, why do you think the home didn't sell? And they say, oh, because of this and this and this. And I'm the first person to ask those questions. They automatically think that Chris knows the solution to this because I understand them.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times I don't even present a solution and they just say, when can you come out to tell us what we need to do? It also shows a lot more confidence. When I'm asking questions, I'm actually in control of the conversation. Whoever's asking questions is typically in control of the conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of someone talking at me, I ask them, well, why do you feel that way? Or things like that. I'm curious. And then it becomes something where I'm looking on how I can help them. Did that answer your question a little bit, I hope?
Yeah, no, it did.
Yeah. Okay. So it's important throughout conversation. Typically, if I'm talking to someone and it feels like, I don't know how else to describe it, but you're almost cornered and you don't know where to go from there. They just give a simple no answer or yes answer, and you don't know how to continue the conversation. Usually it means you haven't asked the right questions to figure out where their needs are, or you've asked questions that are too specific. In my situation with that client, if I would have said, Don, is your home too close to the freeway? And he says, no. I say, okay, how about, would you like a home that has an HOA and you don't have to do the landscaping? He says, no, I love doing landscaping. That's where I start to feel like there's nowhere to go in the conversation. So it's important to ask the right questions, make them open-ended, and I call them conversation starters. Like, what do you do for work? Where are you living? What do you like about it? What would you change about it? How can I help your business? Because typically they'll ask how they can help my business. Things like that can create conversation where you can find value to give them. And even if they say there's an issue or they have a question, you can definitely say, you know what, that is an excellent question. I did that so many times when I started. Say, just so I can be 100% certain, let me do some research and I'll call you back tomorrow at noon. How does that sound?
Yeah.
And I always make sure I call them back at noon.
Yeah, it's a good way to go about it. Instead of saying that, just like, let me get back to you.
Yeah.
Just make sure
Yeah.
it's doing this correctly.
Yeah. Good questions. So the last thing I want to share with you here is, man, I'm so surprised. Like we had quite a few people last time. So I'm going to do a better job preparing and inviting people next time. So you're just getting the one-on-one treatment. So the other thing is this, this is a tough question maybe, but what do you think the general public sees the value of a real estate agent as? Like, where is the value of having a real estate agent nowadays in their eyes? What do you think?
Just someone to hold your hand, and especially for a first-time home buyer.
Yeah. So what does that look like to you, holding their hand? Like, what exactly are they holding their hand through?
Walking them through all the contracts and
contracts. Okay.
And stuff that like kind of the average person wouldn't know about.
Okay.
Stuff that we specialize in.
Yeah. What about on the listing side? What do you think? What do people see nowadays as a value of the agent to list a property?
There's somebody asked me that recently. One of my buddies. He's like, "Oh, you can go on Zillow and you can list it on there, and like, you can skip all that."
Yeah.
One of the values is what I was telling him is you could be pricing it wrong. You could price it so wrong that you're losing money by not having a real estate agent.
Yeah, it's a great point. What's very interesting is the National Association of Realtors. They do surveys every year. And one of those surveys was both with buyers and sellers. And they asked, like, one, where they find the best value in a real estate agent and what they're looking for in an agent.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting to me is over 90% of them, they were all activities and basically finding a market. So what that means is they help them get the home ready to list, and they put it on the market and find a buyer. With buyers, like you kind of mentioned, it's like helping them find a home and maybe writing up an offer for them or something like that. Yeah. The hard part is, and just kind of stating the obvious here, there's a lot of companies that will only do that nowadays, and definitely take discounts many times because they don't do a lot of the other things we do as agents or realtors to help them through the process. So I'm going to go through a couple of these areas, and maybe just as an example, I'm going to give kind of a story on my side. I remember, so being Utah, we like to do things ourselves and look for coupons and all kinds of stuff. I'm learning now, but so in our home, we were looking to put sprinklers in our backyard, in-ground sprinklers. We only had them in the front yard. And I remember, of course, I did what probably every other guy is going to do. I go on YouTube and Google installing sprinklers, in-ground sprinklers. And I'd done research over an entire week. Every time I got home, any free moment I got, I was like Googling, like, okay, I think I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And I remember, have you ever like put in sprinklers, by the way, or anything like that? You don't have to do that.
No, I haven't.
Kentucky, I didn't have to. This is all new to me in Utah. But so anyway, I did my research, looked at some parts, had an idea of what I needed. Then I go to Home Depot, and of course they have these like floor to ceiling shelves and stuff. And I find the sprinkler section, never really paid attention to it before. And lo and behold, I have floor to ceiling parts, valves, springs, filters, piping, everything. And I'm starting to say, okay, there's a little bit more to this, I guess. So I'm looking for my specific parts for quite a while. And I asked for help, and sure enough, the person assigned to that area comes around the corner. And I swear this girl just got her driver's license. She was like so young and everything, not to stereotype people, but so I'm kind of thinking, oh, I'll tell her what's up and everything. So she starts to ask me questions about, around, well, have you measured this and this in your yard? How deep are you going to place your sprinklers? What's your water pressure there? Do you have a pressure regulator? All this stuff. And what do you think is going through my mind when this is happening, when I'm getting these questions?
It's in over my head.
Oh yeah, you bet. At first, I was really prideful, and I tried to like hang with her and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I looked into that. I just need this and this, And
Yeah.
then eventually, I just had to say, I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. Like, do you have contractor services here? People that can do the labor for me? Do you run any deals or specials and stuff? And our conversation kind of changed there. And it's kind of that way is what I am seeing in real estate right now. Let's face it, we understand we're in a seller's market. Inventory is very low. There are a lot of buyers out there. So people are, for the most part, looking at just pricing the home correctly, putting it on the market, and it's like I throw a hook out there and millions of fish are going to bite onto this hook, right? But it's important that we understand kind of the process of what we do A to Z when we're helping individuals, so we can, in a sense, step into that orange apron that worker at the Home Depot came around and I knew right away that there were more things to take care of to protect me in that process to make sure things didn't go south. So I'm going to take you through what I call earn the right statements. And I'm going to challenge you to do something here. Once you write these down, I'd really like you to start to, and you can do this, you don't have to be licensed to do it, but start to get an idea of what those action steps or what those actions look like in each of these areas as far as what you're doing for someone, okay? So the first earn the right statement that I share with agents is we consult and advise. Now, these are going to sound very basic, and we're going to go into more detail in just a moment, but we consult and advise with our clients. The second is we market and expose. The third is we negotiate. And the fourth category is we manage the transaction. This goes into kind of the paperwork you were talking about before, right? So what that sounds like is when I consult and advise, and I used expireds as an example before, I find a lot of time with owners of expired listings when I'm asking them questions about why they think the home didn't sell. A lot of times they don't really have an idea of why it didn't sell. Say, that's a good question. And then I may ask a question like, what did your agent tell you? And then they'll say, well, the agent told us we should lower the price. Other than that, we didn't really know what was going on. So when I hear that, I immediately hear this is someone that did not receive enough communication. They did not have someone to consult and advise with them through the process, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Another time is someone may say, well, our home went under contract. We had an offer in that we accepted, but it like blew up in the process. All of a sudden they couldn't get their loan together. And we were 3 days before closing, and all of a sudden they couldn't come up with the required funds. So when I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, someone didn't manage that transaction well, and there's a pain point there.
Yeah.
Right. It could also be someone says, well, it was priced, and I can see it looks like it was priced correctly. But they say we had a lot of traffic at first, but after that, we just had no traffic in week 2. And the rest of the time we had no traffic whatsoever. So that can tell me that maybe they didn't have a plan to market and expose the property to the right buyers.
Yeah.
Right?
That off.
So that's why it's important in that step 2 to ask questions around, what happened, what's going on. And it depends on the individual I'm reaching out to learn things. If I'm calling friends and family, it could be, where are you living now? How long you been there? How do you like it? They may tell me in the process that they're renting. Have you thought about owning? How much are you paying in rent per month? That could easily go to a mortgage instead. Do you know how it can actually save you money on taxation and stuff? So through asking questions, I'm going to start to uncover some of these areas where people need help. And then based off of what I shared before, that kind of sales process, once I uncover a need, I then present a solution. So what that can sound like is, and that's why I invited you to kind of write down what you think would be the action steps, or what you would do to consult and advise with someone through the process, or market and expose the property, what your marketing plan is, and tools available to you. So what that sounds like is someone would say, yeah, we didn't talk to our agent a whole lot. It seemed like, they signed our paperwork, or we signed his paperwork. But after that, we would call, and he would have someone else from his office call us back 2 days later, and it was a little frustrating. And what that sounds like for me is I say, okay, just so I hear you clearly, it sounds like maybe some more communication to understand what the market was saying would have allowed you to make adjustments to your marketing and things to be able to pull in a buyer. Is that right? And they say yes. And then at that time I would say, I'm sorry you went through that. Unfortunately, I hear that from other people from time to time, but I'm glad you bring it up, because what I do is on a weekly basis, the same day, the same time, I'll give you a call, and within my market report, I'll share with you how many people are coming through the home. I also reach out to every buyer that comes through, or their agent, to get their feedback, so we know in real time what the market is saying about your property, and then we can make adjustments to the market to make sure we get the highest price it's willing to pay.
Yeah.
So you hear within that, I hear where the need is, and then because I have an action plan around it, I know how to share that with them. And I also, within that action plan, need to be able to say how this benefits you is ... It's basically, you'll always be in the know with what's happening and not feel like you're in the dark, right? And that's where it really appeals to people. And that's also where I'm not presenting the same thing to every person every time, because different people have different needs depending on their situation. It may sound easy, but it's important to internalize it. I always thought that I was a good salesperson, but I kind of figured out that I was doing it off of a presentation, that I started to group people into these categories, and I think this is what their need is. So I present really well this area, or this value proposition. But I started to find the more I could allow people to voice what their concerns are and give them a platform to do it, it then became a conversation. And then, rather than being a salesperson, I moved into a trusted advisor. Yeah. And that's where they'd be raving fans. Yeah. Do you have any questions about that so far? What are your thoughts about that? Or
nothing so far. Just taking it all in right now.
Okay. So you will find that while a lot of people practice the presentation, it is important, and we do that. I would say first, it's important to practice going through those steps: connect, build rapport, ask the right questions, listen attentively. Then based off of something you hear, say, tell me more about that, help me understand. Based off of that, you can present a solution or an opportunity, and then invite them to do something to move forward. And based off of that, we have these different areas in which we help people. And then they start to learn that maybe there is more to this process. In every listing presentation I've done, well, not in the beginning, but in the end, once I had a chance to share my value proposition and my action plan, I always told them, I was like, can I share something with you before we go over paperwork? I call it my promise. And they're kind of like, oh, okay. And they're kind of like weirded up. I'd say, well, I just wanted to mention this. And especially if they're interviewing other agents, I always go through what I'm doing for them. But I say, if we work together, there's a lot of pieces to the transaction. There's a lot of people working in different areas. There's the lender, the appraiser, the inspector, the title companies. There's the other buyer, their agent, a lot of people involved in this. And I have to be honest with you, it's pretty common that there's some wrinkle or something that comes up through the process, through this transaction. And I say, what I promise you is this, that I've hand selected the team I work with, where if or when a problem arises, that we'll address it with lightning fast accuracy and communicate with you along the way what we're doing to find a solution to it. In addition to that, I promise that I'm not going to always tell you what you want to hear. but I can promise you I'm going to tell you what you need to hear so you can make the best educated decision for you and your family. In that, people start to hear that there's more to this process than I thought, right? They're starting to learn that there's more to it. And it's important. The last thing I just wanted to say is it's important that we get effective at communicating that value proposition, that we do it in a way that people understand and we can share how it benefits them, right? Some things I know you're talking about, just lastly, in connecting and building rapport, especially with people. If you're looking to share information that's relevant for other people, that you know what's going on in the market, a couple places I'd really recommend looking, especially when you're starting out. The Utah Association of Realtors, I think it's uar.com. One of the tabs there is housing statistics, and I don't think you need to be licensed to be able to look at that. I like what they have there because it's one, relevant to our state and our area, but on top of that, it's pretty easy to follow. The second area I'd recommend is really on Facebook. If you go to the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, or whatever board in the area you're going to be working in, but if you're in Salt Lake County, the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, and if you scroll down, you're going to see statistics that they post that are very user-friendly. Statistics like, in Salt Lake County, learn about which cities within Salt Lake County have appreciated the most over the last year. And let's say if it's Holiday or Alpine, this gives you an opportunity to reach out to all your friends and anyone you know in Alpine, or even the general public in Alpine, and say, did you realize this area is appreciated more in value than anywhere else on average in Salt Lake County? And do you know how that benefits you if you have more equity in your home? So that's a strong, call to action, and it's something that appeals to people.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Good. So that's kind of what I have. I don't know exactly who else just joined us is iPhone, but do either of you have any questions for me whatsoever, or any thoughts, or any, we call them ahas at Keller Williams, any light bulbs go off in regards to what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I gained a lot just for talk today.
Good. Hope so.
And check out those statistics. Maybe text some friends that live in the area.
Yeah.
One of my buddies was telling me his house went up $50,000 this year.
Oh yeah, it's totally possible. There are areas it's gone up 7%, 8% in a year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I sold a home 2.5 years ago, and I'm like, perfect timing. And then a year later, like I still look at it every now and again, and yeah, hurts a little bit, but good. Yeah. So there's definitely great opportunity right now. If I say anything else, I know this may not be in relation to the value add, but obviously getting into the market, I do recommend starting to have a plan around listing properties and what you're doing to get out there to list properties within your marketing plan or how you're building your business, because obviously the value in those properties nowadays and how many buyers are out there in pretty much any price point is amazing now. So it's a big topic of conversation we've had as agents. But again, that sales process, it's not so much about selling anymore, but it's about finding value. So the interesting thing is I do it all the time now. I try and do it more. Even when we met Connor, it's more getting to know you, connecting, tell me about you, what your plans are. Again, it's not to manipulate, but it's to get myself out of my own way instead of just talking at you the whole time, pretty much like I've been doing on Zoom tonight. But it's not about talking at you, but learning about you and letting you talk for the most of the time so I can learn what your needs are, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. Dude, thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. Again, hopefully you found good value in it. And oh, it's Marie. Hi, Marie. So, and I am recording this. So if you would like a copy, I should be able to send one out later if you want to reference it. And have a great night. If I don't talk to you beforehand, have an awesome holiday.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Okay,
Thank you, Chris.
Of course, Marie. See ya. See you guys.
See ya.